Veerabhadra Jamanatiravanachari Veerabhadra Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivijagacharya Astatarasatasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaura Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is one of the Srimad Bhagavatam reading groups, right? Yes? And we've been at somebody else's home a few times, but this is the first time it's at your home. Same group, right? Same group. Okay. And how far has this group gotten in reading Srimad Bhagavatam so far? How many? Canto 2, Chapter 5. Nice, huh? Gets a little complicated, doesn't it? But creation, all the details and details. Okay, well, we're as far along as you see, Canto 4, chapters 1 through 7. We completed Canto 3, and there a significant part of the topics of Canto 2 are repeated in Canto 3, just with more detail, specific to creation and subcreation. Now, those are the nice English words. The Sanskrit words are Sarga and Visarga. Sarga is what Vishnu does. Visarga is what Brahma does in terms of creation. So it's 2 of 10 topics. It's a significant part of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. And where we completed with Canto 3, because this is the beginning of Canto 4, Vishnu did what Vishnu does, Brahma did what Brahma does, and there's, after the universes are built, comes phase 2, and that's populating the universe with praja, and making laws for mankind, because mankind is an important part of creation. So we heard about the appearance of Swayambhuva Manu. Swayambhuva Manu is Manu number 1 of 14. Every day of Brahma there's 14 Manus. And Swayambhuva Manu appeared directly from the body of Brahma. No help from his wife, just poof. Swayambhuva Manu and his wife, Shatarupa. And it's described there that they had a service. Brahma gave them a service with folded palms. What is their service? Help me. I've created the universe. Please help me fill up the universe with good praja. And so that was their service. And there were some other services, giving laws for mankind. But according to Canto 3, there were 2 sons and there were 3 daughters. And we heard a lot about daughter number 1. And her daughter number 1's name was Devahuti. Devahuti, the son of daughter of Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa. And there was a whole long section. Devahuti becomes married to Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni was like a very special person. He was a direct son of Brahma. And he had mystic powers, and he was a meditator, and 10,000 years of austerities, because it was Satya Yuga. So that was, a long time. And Vishnu appeared right in the forest where he was doing his meditation and austerities, and said, "You please me very much, so I've come before you. And I know what you want." The prayers were offered, but he said, your heart's desire is that you'd like to have me as your son. He has parental affection towards Lord Vishnu. Pretty amazing. So you can't have parental affection toward Lord Vishnu unless he appears in the human form, so appeared as his son. And for that purpose, he needed a wife, and so the wife was arranged. Matchmaker Vishnu made an arrangement. In 2 days, Swayambhuva Manu is going to come with his daughter, Devahuti, to become your wife, and she's qualified like you are. So just say yes. It's real easy. And we'll do the marriage right here in the forest. And the marriage was done, and they lived together, husband and wife. She, a princess, the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, used to palatial, kingly opulences and pleasures and comforts. Nothing. Austere life as the wife of Kardama Muni, and she wasn't uncomfortable. She was happy. She wanted to be with him. He was so qualified. And after many thousands of years of that, he was pleased, and he recognized she wants children. I also. So he said, you've served me nicely. What would you like? I'd like a child. And so he made that arrangement. We heard. By his mystic power, he created a flying city with palatial buildings and parks and lakes and trees and birds and everything. And they traveled in that palatial city throughout the universe. They went kind of like on a vacation from their austerities and saw this and that and the other, all the heavenly planets, and they were celebrated personalities even in the heavenly planets. Then they returned, and 9 daughters were born. Those 9 daughters, Brahma descended and made an arrangement. Those 9 daughters should be married to some of my other sons. Some of those 9 daughters, each of those 9 daughters were assigned to be married to sons, so they could further the population of the universe with good praja. And he, Brahma, indicated that within the womb of Devahuti is a child, a male child, and he's an incarnation of personality of Godhead. Before Kapila Dev was born, Brahma confirmed. He's the personality of Godhead. He was born, and after some time, Kardama, the husband, requested permission from his son, who was Lord Vishnu, to go to the forest and continue with his austerities and so forth. So he left, and she, Devahuti, was feeling great separation. And so Devahuti submitted a number of questions, and we discussed it yesterday. And especially well known for Kapila Dev. I mean, many of you know, but when you get to 3rd Canto, you're going to find out for sure. He taught Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya Yoga. Sankhya Yoga. It's a very important section of the Bhagavatam. It's a very detailed description of the elements of material creation and how they unfold in the process of manifestation, and later it will find in Canto 12 how they're withdrawn back to the subtle, unmanifest state. So he describes Sankhya, then he describes fixing your mind on that different than matter is spirit, meditate on super soul, eventually engage in devotional service to the Supreme Lord. There's a whole long section on, there are 3 chapters on devotional service, from Kapila to Devahuti. So that's where we ended. And now we're beginning Canto 4. So just remember, the topic of Swayambhuva Manu was going to continue, because that's what happens after creation, is filling up the universe with the various species and quality living entities. So this is our own little subtitle, Fall Down Due to False Pride. It's a lesson in how to avoid the problem of pride. Pride can be very destructive. Pride can be very destructive. So we'll hear about it. The person that gets the pride is focused upon is Daksha. So here we go. Canto 4, is according to Padma Purana. You see the painting on the right-hand side? According to Padma Purana, the 12 cantos, there's 6 on the left side, 6 on the right side, makes 12. The 12 cantos are representing the limbs of the body of Krishna. The body of Krishna has feet and legs and waist and chest and arms and so forth. Similarly, the 12 cantos, the first 2 cantos are the lotus feet. He has 2 feet. And those first canto, second canto is 2 lotus feet. And the 3rd and 4th canto are his thighs, and then so forth, thus making the literary form of the Lord. Because you've done your Bhagavatam reading through for Canto 1, you know this from Canto 1. After Krishna left, there's a question in Canto 1. Where have religious principles taken shelter now that Krishna has left? And the answer that's given is Srimad Bhagavatam. Shortly after the sun sets in the west, the moon rises in the east. And the moon that's as brilliant as the sun is the Srimad Bhagavatam that gives light in this age of darkness. It's the shelter of religious principles. So, the Srimad Bhagavatam is the form of Krishna in a literary presentation of revealing. When Prabhupada, if you can imagine, close your eyes for a minute, imagine being a world acharya, and you're translating the Srimad Bhagavatam for the world, and you want to give each of the cantos some heading. So Prabhupada did that. And he chose for Canto 4 the creation of the 4th order. He didn't explain why he chose that, but it's the 4th order in this case means the Brahmana, because it's the process of creation is unfolding, and in the process of creation, you need the head department, you need the arms department, you need the torso or belly department, you need the legs department. That's the social body. But the 4th order is the head. And when the head is out of order, the whole machine is out of order. So there's good example and there's bad examples in this 4th canto for those who are brahmanas. And that's in the next slide here. We're going to hear in this canto, this is the whole fourth canto. It's a long canto. We receive lessons from very elevated personalities, starting with Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. And Suniti, that's the mother of Dhruva. And Dhruva gives some nice teachings. Narada gives some nice teachings. King Anga gives some nice teachings. King Prithu gives some nice teachings. And the Prajetas comes at the very end of the fourth canto. So we're going to hear about all these people and get some really elevated instructions and teachings from these personalities. We also get the do not, the unfavorable attitudes that results in calamity. And top of the list is Daksha. That's, he falls down because of his offense to Lord Shiva. The stepmother of Dhruva, her name is Suruchi. We're going to hear about her in this canto. Vena, Indra, and Prachinabhari. So, as we go along, you can maybe remember the slide. Maybe we'll see this slide again. These are unfavorable attitudes that create calamity, big havoc in life. And we're also going to receive some very nice prayers from very elevated persons, including Dhruva, Prithu, and the Prajetas. So that's like a big picture of the whole of the fourth canto. And here's a nice image that shows what we're going to be discussing this evening. The first 7 chapters of Canto 7 of Canto 4, excuse me. And we're going to go over in that, like 8:30 or so, and like it's a face of a clock over there, number 1. And it's going to go further from Canto 3 into Canto 4, Chapter 1, about Swayambhuva Manu and the dynasty of Swayambhuva Manu. So far, we've only heard a little bit. And a little bit is he had 3 sons and 2 daughters. 3 daughters and 2 sons, excuse me. We heard a lot about one of the daughters, Devahuti. Now we're going to hear some more about the other descendants of Manu. So there's this nice long list, and towards the end of this chapter 1, there's mention of Daksha. So who's Daksha? He's a very important person in these 7 chapters. Like Kardama Muni from Canto 3, Daksha is one of the direct sons of Brahma. And one of the 9 daughters of Kardama Muni was given to Daksha for marriage, and from Daksha he did the Prajapati program. In fact, he was like a celebrated Prajapati. And another thing he's known for is he did lots of yajnas. He was really into rituals. And he was very proud of himself because he had done so many rituals. He was a Brahmana that did rituals. And unfortunately, his heart wasn't pure from doing rituals. He was opulent and skilled and celebrated, but his heart he was proud. So he had some problems because of his pride. So one of his daughters was named Murti. And Murti and her husband produced as an offspring Narayana Rishi. It's mentioned in this canto. Now, Narayana Rishi is the Supreme Lord. He doesn't need mother or father. But he reciprocated with them to become their son. It's mentioned in this canto, chapter 1. Now here's a nice chart. Hope you like charts. That it's an overview. At the very top, you see Swayambhuva Manu and Shatarupa, because that's what this is discussing. Chapter 1 is discussing their lineage of Swayambhuva Manu. So there we see on the left is 3 daughters, over on the right is 2 sons. We already heard from Canto 3 about Devahuti and Kardamamuni. And then, they're mentioned extensively in Canto 3. They're mentioned again, not this evening, but tomorrow it's mentioned. They're mentioned again in chapter 10 of this fourth canto. And then we're going to hear something about, very, very lightly touching on the two other daughters besides Devahuti is Akuti and Prasuti. And Akuti married Ruchi Rishi, and there's just a very light mention, verses 1 through 9 in this first chapter. Verses 1 through 9 in this first chapter. The offspring of Akuti and Ruchi. Now, their big topic over there is Daksha. So, Daksha married one of Swayambhuva Manu's daughters, Prasuti. And then there were descendants. There's many, many, many daughters. Important in this section. One of the daughters of Daksha married Lord Shiva. Satie married Lord Shiva. And that created he was proud. So he was very insulting to his son-in-law, Satie's husband. He was very proud and arrogant and insulting. And it brought his ruination. So, in this section, you see that box there that says fourth canto, Canto 4, chapter 1, verse 48, and they're all of his descendants. So his descendants include Dhruva, so the whole story of Dhruva Maharaj, Prithu Maharaj, it's all in this fourth canto, descendant from Prasuti and Daksha, in that line, and so forth, right through the end of what we're going to be discussing. This evening. Okay, descendants of Daksha. Now over here, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. Over here, there's, pardon me, I spoke incorrectly. The descendants of Daksha is what we're going to be discussing this evening, and tomorrow it's over here on the next box. So one of the sons was Uttanapada. He became the next king or emperor following Swayambhuva Manu. He had two queens, Suniti and Suruchi, and so the story of Dhruva, Prithu, and so forth is in this box. All this is just an overview. This whole canto is the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu. And then finally over here in the fifth canto is Priyavrata, another one of his sons. And we hear about him and his descendants in 15 chapters of Canto 5. That's just to get you an overview of, because you start getting into details and you forget what the big picture, this is the big picture. So now we're going on to chapter 2, because chapter 1 was a quick summary of Swayambhuva Manu and his descendants. And now we're going to chapter 2. It's Daksha offending Lord Shiva. So we mentioned already, I'll say it again. Daksha had a number of daughters with Prasuti, his wife. And one of those daughters was given in marriage to Lord Shiva, and her name was Satie. But because of the pride of Daksha, he was very insulting towards his son-in-law, Lord Shiva. So there's some nice glorification of Lord Shiva, the son-in-law of Daksha. Shila Vatam Shreste. Shila Vatam. Shila means behavior or conduct. So, Shilavatam Shreshte, he's the best among the gentle. Chara Chara Gurum, he's the spiritual master of the whole world. The moving and the non-moving. Chara Charam Gurum. Nir Vairam, he's without enmity. Shanta Vigraham, always peaceful. And Atmaramam, self-satisfied. So these are some nice qualities of Lord Shiva that are mentioned. And then going back to Canto 3, those of you that were not with us, just a little review. Let's stay focused here. A little review. This is the discussion between Vidura, who's pictured on our left, and Maitreya, who's pictured on our right. Vidura meets Maitreya. It's part of the pilgrimage, or after Vidura was insulted and went on to holy places, one of the things that happened in that pilgrimage is he met Maitreya. And extensively he inquired, in fact, almost 3 cantos worth of discussion. There's Vidura asking questions of Maitreya. So Vidura is very surprised. How is it that Daksha could hate or have animosity towards such a wonderful person, Lord Shiva? How did that happen? So then Maitreya replies by describing what happened. There was a big sacrifice, yajna, because Daksha means expert. The meaning of his name, Daksha means expert. So he was really expert at yajnas. So he called all the leading personalities, rishis, yogis, and even the demigods to come and participate in this super yajna. And he purposefully didn't come on time because he wanted to make his grand entrance after everybody else had assembled, so he'd be like the guest of honor or something. And when Daksha entered, immediately, because they had such respect for him, everyone rose. This is a very old lithograph drawing. If you see in the upper left corner, that's Brahma with the foreheads. Down in the lower right corner, that's Lord Shiva with his trident. And then there's everybody else. Now everybody else, except Brahma and Shiva, stood up, just out of respect. I mean, cultured people do that. Here's a little sharing. Once upon a time, I was a brahmachari, some years ago. And at the temple where I was mainly based in New York, there was a nice devotee from India that he had taken on the service of being the receptionist. It was right by the front door. So he had to let people in and would answer the phone, that kind of thing. And whenever I would walk by, he would stand up. And it happened so many times, I just asked him, what's all that about? And he said, it's just the way I was trained from a young boy. Whenever you're in the presence, because when in cultured people, when they see a sannyasi, they offer their obeisances, but if you're the receptionist, you don't do that. But he stood to offer respect. Kind of like in the American system, the vestige of it is in courts. In a courtroom, everyone's seated, and when the judge comes in, the court, whatever the person's title is, says, everyone rise, and you stand. And if you don't stand, you're put in jail. It's a law. You have to show respect to the judge. So a respect-worthy person is minimally, you rise. So everybody rose when Daksha came in because they respected him, and he wanted that respect, except for 2 people. And one of those people was Brahma. If you remember, Brahma is his father. So Brahma stayed seated. And so did Lord Shiva. But Lord Shiva is his son-in-law. So, according to Daksha, he is violating basic etiquette. Everyone else knows etiquette except this guy, my son-in-law. So he went off on him. Here's what it says. In that great assembly, everyone except Brahma and Shiva stood up to welcome Daksha. Daksha offered respect to Brahma, but while gazing at Lord Shiva, he began to speak harsh words. Now, up in the upper left corner, that's Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. And over here on the right side, that's Daksha, and then that's his daughter, who is married to his son-in-law, Lord Shiva. So he spoke very harsh words. These are some of those harsh words. There, again, you see Brahma seated and Lord Shiva seated, and Daksha's going off on a rail, vilifying the wrong person. On the pretext of speaking about good manners and the culture of respect, Daksha's envy took the shape of sharp words as he criticized Lord Shiva. And here's some of the things he said. This Shiva is shameless and proud. That's what he is. He's shameless and proud. He married my daughter and thus accepted himself as my subordinate, yet he doesn't offer me due respects. He is impure, unclean, homeless, mad, and the master of ghosts in ignorance. So he's just very merciful, and he accepts people who need mercy. So he gives his mercy to those people. Due to his deep-rooted envy, Daksha cursed Shiva, saying, the demigods are eligible to share in the oblations of sacrifice, but Lord Shiva, who is the lowest of all the demigods, should not have a share. Now, this is Satya Yuga, and up until the Kali Yuga, the demigods, they have the freedom to travel wherever they wish, and they would, from time to time, freely come to this earthly realm, where people were doing sacrifices, and they would show themselves and receive the sacrifice. But Kali Yuga became so degraded that they had to, there was a quarantine order. Don't go there. It's too toxic. This earthly realm during the ages. So we don't see demigods. But they would come and in previous ages and literally receive the offerings in sacrifice. So having insulted Lord Shiva, that we started a problem. Nandishvara, the devout servant of Lord Shiva, became irritated at Daksha and counter-cursed Daksha and all his Brahmana supporters, saying, anyone who has accepted Daksha as the most important personality and neglected Lord Shiva because of envy is less intelligent, and because of visualizing in duality will be bereft of transcendental knowledge. So Nandishvara spoke like that. And then from the Brahmin side, Bhrigu said, let the followers of Lord Shiva become atheists, be diverted from scriptural injunctions, become addicted to wine, flesh, and take shelter of unauthorized and heretical views. A Brahmana curse. When such cursing and counter-cursing was going on between Lord Shiva's followers and the parties of Daksha and Bhrigu, Lord Shiva became very morose. There's some very nice paintings of Lord Shiva here. Not saying anything, he left the arena of the sacrifice, followed by his disciples. So that was chapter 2. And now we're moving on to chapter 3. In this manner, the tension between the father-in-law and son-in-law, that's Daksha and Lord Shiva, continued for considerable long period. So now what happens? Chapter 3, Satie begs her husband, Lord Shiva, to let her attend her father's sacrifice. So down there is number 3. Number 2 is Daksha curses or insults Lord Shiva. Number 3 is Satie sees all these celestial beings traveling through the air with their husbands and the demigods and this and that, and she understands where they're going. They're going to a yajna that her father is holding. And so she wants to attend. Yeah, social. Meet with her relatives and everybody. So deliberately, Daksha had planned this big yajna and deliberately didn't invite Lord Shiva. So seeing this big event, her being the daughter of the person who's hosting the event, Satie wants to attend for a nice social gathering. And she speaks in such a way to persuade her husband to give his permission. It's a very interesting exchange. So there's some nice teachings of Lord Shiva that are relevant for us. Here's what she said. My dear Lord Shiva, your father-in-law is now executing great sacrifices, and all the demigods having been invited by him are going there. If you so desire, we may also go. Although he's already been insulted. My sisters, my mother's sisters, and their husbands, and other affectionate relatives must be assembled there, so if I go, I shall be able to see them. My dear husband, I'm very anxious to go. You know, those of you that are married and your wife wants to do something, like, I really want to do something. I really want to do something. You know it's going to have a bad outcome. What do? This is nice. This is a nice husband lesson here. Wise Shiva reasoned with emotional Satie. One can go to a friend or relative's house, even uninvited, but only if the host is not a fault finder. The 6 qualities, knowledge, austerity, wealth, beauty, youth, and heritage, become faults in a proud person who cannot see good in others. Fault finding. Not seeing the good in others, seeing the faults. Because according to scriptural teaching, there are these the nice Sanskrit words, guna and dosha. Quality and fault. And everybody has some good qualities, and everybody has some faults. And fault finders can't see the good qualities, they see the faults. And persons who are elevated, they see the faults, but they don't focus on them, and they try to amplify the good qualities. And by amplifying the good qualities, diminish the influence of the shortcomings, or the doshas. But some persons, they don't see, they just see faults. And that your father-in-law has that character. He's already demonstrated it. My dear young wife, certainly friends and relatives offer mutual greetings by standing up, welcoming one another, and offering obeisances. So there's 3. Those that are superiors, those that are peers, those that are juniors. There are different ways of greeting someone, a friend or relative or someone you know. But those who are elevated to the transcendental platform, being intelligent, offer such respects to the supersoul who is sitting within the body, not to the person who identifies with the body. I am always engaged in offering obeisances to Lord Vasudeva in pure Krishna consciousness. So this is an explanation of why he didn't stand when Daksha came in. Because he was offering his obeisances to the Supersoul always. That's his. When Shiva's in meditation, what's his meditation? We see pictures or paintings. He's meditating. What he's saying here, he's meditating on Lord Vasudeva. And he's always meditating on Lord Vasudeva. He's the greatest Vaishnavanam Nitashambhu. He's the greatest of all devotees. So he didn't stand, but he was insulted because he wasn't understood why he wasn't standing. It was taken as disrespect, but he was offering respect in a different way. You may be the favorite daughter of Daksha, but he will not respect you because of your connection with me. Therefore, you should not see your father, although he is the giver of your body, because he and his followers are envious of me. Because of his envy, O most worshipful one, he has insulted me with cruel words, although I am innocent. In other words, he didn't understand his elevated position, and not understanding, he insulted him. He saw external things. And so we should not, there's a saying, don't judge a book by its cover. Marketing is like all about the cover, but in character, it's all about the person, not the cover. So don't judge a saintly person by external things. It's the consciousness they carry that's to be respected, and to understand the person. So he doesn't understand me. Because he doesn't understand me, he was looking at external things and vilifying the external things. His pride got the best of him. If, in spite of this instruction, you decide to go, he didn't tell her don't go. She didn't say, I'm going. And she didn't exactly twist his arm. She did kind of like, I want to go, let's go. But, she's very respectful, and he's very liberal. If you neglect my words, the future will not be good for you. You are most respectable. But when you are insulted by your relatives, this insult will immediately be equal to death. And her, nature of wanting to be with relatives and so forth got the best of her. And despite good advice, people sometimes get good advice and do something else. So it wasn't a good outcome. Now, that was chapter 3. And we're moving along. Chapter 4. So chapter 4 is over there. You see Satie in her entering into a meditation state of where her body burst into flames and she burned up because of the insult to Lord Shiva. Satie gets a cold response from Daksha. We saw this image before. And there she is before her father. And she then condemns Daksha. Now, she wasn't invited, but she's the daughter, so she came. But he's doing his fault-finding thing. And after she's insulted, she speaks very directly, like very strongly. You're an asadhutama. Sadhu? Uttama. And put the letter A in front, you're not an elevated sadhu. As you insulted an exalted personality. So Daksha insulted Shiva directly to his daughter. The dust of Vaishnava's feet diminishes an offender. If you offend the dust of the feet, the dust of the Vaishnava's feet diminishes that offender. Lord Shiva's name, fame, orders, and lotus feet are glorious. She knows because she's his consort. Lord Shiva is not obliged to follow Vedic rules. That is, he's in a transcendental position. He follows. But if he doesn't follow, it's not there's a transgression. There's not obligation. For worldly people, there's obligation. Materialists cannot achieve the power of transcendentalists. and Lord Shiva is such a transcendentalist. My body is a source of embarrassment because it came from you. So decides to give up her body because it's her connection with this offender. And she means it. Here's one of the verses from that section. It is not wonderful for persons who have accepted the transient material body as a self to engage always in deriding great souls. Such envy on the part of materialistic persons is very good, because that is the way they fall down. They are diminished by the dust of the feet of great personalities. So she speaks strongly. And she decides, since my body was born from a blasphemer, I will give it up. And meditating on the holy lotus feet of her husband, who is Jagat Guru, Satie became completely cleansed of all contaminations, that is, her identity as Daksha's daughter, and quit her body by meditation in a blazing fire of the fiery elements. She didn't pour gasoline and light a match. She just did meditation. And in such intense meditation, her body burst into flames. Right in front of everybody, and everybody was shocked. A great cry arose from the sky. Ribhus. Who are the Ribhus? I researched, I couldn't find much. Ribhus is mentioned in this section. It's a certain type of demigod. And they came, and when there was this commotion by the followers or attendants of Lord Shiva, they tried to drive them away. Little battle ensued. That was a problem. So first was offending Shiva, and then directly to Satie, offending Lord Shiva. And so her response was giving up her body. There you see on the right side, there's her father, Daksha, leaning back like, wow, there goes my daughter. Chapter 5. What happens when Lord Shiva hears what happened. Angered by his wife's death, Shiva creates the fearful demon Veerabhadra, who destroys the sacrifice and beheads Daksha. You know this story? Good pictures, huh? Yeah. So Narada Muni went to inform Lord Shiva what happened. And when Lord Shiva heard what happened, and that the Lord Shiva's followers, had been driven away by the Ribhus. These are a certain type of demigods. Ooh, he became very angry. Don't anger Lord Shiva, you're going to have a problem. A partial incarnation of Lord Shiva is Daksha. You don't anger Daksha either. But you don't anger Lord Shiva, because he became furious. Thus Lord Shiva became extremely angry, pressed his lips with his teeth, and immediately snatched from his head a strand of hair which blazed like electricity or fire. He stood up at once, laughing like a madman, and dashed the hair to the ground, something like Daksha did to get at Ambarish Maharaj. That comes later, 9th Canto. You know that story too. So, from that hair, a fearful black demon, Veerabhadra, appeared. Look at that guy. Because you were born from my body, you are the chief of all my associates. Therefore, kill Daksha and his soldiers at the sacrifice. Now that's a modern painting. And here's a more traditional painting, Veerabhadra. And here's a BBT painting. He's got a lot of arms. He's got a lot of weapons. And he's very fierce. Here's another modern painting. He's going at it and smashing everybody. So here's what he did. He tore off Brigu's mustache. Ouch. There was another sage named Bhaga, and Bhaga was raising his eyebrows when Daksha was cursing Lord Shiva. So Veerabhadra smashed him to the ground and his eyes bugged out. And then another sage named Pusha was grinning, showing his teeth, so he just punched his teeth out. And then, last but not least, look at this. There's a wooden device of some kind used for chopping off the head of an animal to be sacrificed. And Veerabhadra grabbed Lord Daksha by the arm, placed his neck over that chopping device, and chopped his head off. And, a whole big thing ensued. The followers of Lord Shiva made a mess of the demigods and the sages and those that were ridiculing Lord Shiva. Don't mess with Lord Shiva. You have a problem. Chapter 7. And we're only going to chapter 6. We're only going to chapter 7. Up on top, you see the painting. There's Brahma going to the abode of Lord Shiva and having some conversation. Remember, Brahma is his father, and he's very respectful to his father. So the surviving demigods and priests and members of the sacrificial ceremony, they were all defeated by Lord Shiva, and some were injured by weapons like tridents and swords. The remaining ones approached Lord Brahma, as you see on the left there. And after offering their obeisances, they explained everything that happened. Obviously, they want, what do we do? So Brahma instructs, you cannot be happy by executing a sacrifice if you blaspheme a great personality and thereby offend his lotus feet. You cannot have happiness in that way. You can't do good stuff and be offenders and be prosperous. Offense to an exalted person is has very serious consequences. So he didn't say, I'll take care of it. He just said, you really made a big mistake. Now, Daksha was the main person, but they were followers. They were following him. So if a person that's a leader does something like that, you can't follow the person that does something like that, or you're implicated. So what happened next was Brahma went to the place where Lord Shiva was. It's a very long section. Look at this place where Lord Shiva is seated. Banyan trees that are very mystical looking. And it's in the region of Mount Kailash. In this region of Mount Kailash is also another name or a section of Kailash is Alaka. And there's a very lengthy description of what that place is like. Lakes with a very special kind of lotus. Amongst lotuses, there's a special kind that's super fragrant, and the whole area is fragrant like anything. And so it's just a very celestial place. You can't go there, but, with a tour guide. It's in a higher realm, higher dimensional space. But it's there. And Brahma took the demigods and these great sages there, and they had some exchange. As soon as Lord Shiva saw Lord Brahma, he immediately stood up, bowed at his feet. Now, he didn't bow at Daksha's feet, but he's bowing at Brahma's feet. although he's always meditating, one who meditates on Lord Vasudeva still may make external show of respect for a great personality. It wasn't done with Daksha because he was just meditating on Vasudeva. But so he showed his respect to Brahma. And Brahma, in turn, he praised Lord Shiva in many ways. There's verses and verses of praising Lord Shiva. And then he spoke like this. He's his son, but he's addressing him with respect. "O Lord, please spare sinful Daksha. Such people are already killed by providence due to their mean-mindedness, envy, and for causing distress to others by piercing words. They need not be killed again by exalted persons like you." So he makes a request, like basically bring him back to life. "Let Daksha, who has been appointed in charge of religious sacrifices, get back his life. Please revive others too. Please take your share of sacrifice and let the sacrifice be completed." Now, what was said in the first chapter and second chapter, Daksha said everyone gets their share of the sacrifice except Shiva. Now, Brahma is the superior, and he's saying you should receive your share also. So that's how Daksha responds is very interesting. How Shiva responds is very interesting. And this is our last chapter. Up there, you see in the upper left corner, that's Lord Vishnu riding on the back of Garuda. He's going to show up at the end of this chapter. Daksha now has the head of a goat. After he was beheaded by Veerabhadra, his head was burned into ashes. But he got his body still there, and so Lord Shiva made the arrangement for him to have a body that's revived, but he gave him the head of a goat. That was pretty embarrassing, because he was really beautiful. I mean, very beautiful. And he was proud of his beauty. Now he got a goat's head. He was very ashamed. Could you imagine? Walking around with a goat's head. Then Vishnu appears in the sacrificial arena. So that's a summary of the chapter. Lord Shiva replies, "My dear Father Brahma, I do not mind the offenses created by the demigods, because these demigods are childish and less intelligent. I do not take a serious view of their offenses, and I have punished them only in order to right them." In other words, an elevated person, and Lord Shiva is certainly an elevated person, if they take strong action, it's to correct someone. Just like sometimes a loving parent may have to do something very strong with the child. They're not like that all the time, but if necessary. And the purpose of that strong is they're headed in a dangerous direction or course, and to make sure you say it softly, and you may have to say it firmly, because it can be very detrimental. Anyway, so good leadership, good parenting, being a good caretaker of others sometimes requires strong action. And that's what Lord Shiva is saying. I took strong action, not because I was hurt by them, but they needed some correction. So he agrees. Just like that, Brahma said. So he goes back by mystical arrangement. He makes this arrangement for Daksha to have a goat's head. And Daksha comes before Lord Shiva, very contrite, certainly embarrassed, and speaks some nice words, indicating I had a misunderstanding of who you really are. Now I have a proper understanding of who you really are. You've very kindly given me my life back, although I deserve to be killed for that offense. And our Father, Lord Brahma, because Brahma is the father of both, our Father desires the yajna continue. So the yajna continued. This is the concluding parts of chapter 7. And when the yajna continues, we already have Brahma and Shiva, and all of a sudden Lord Vishnu appears. You see in the lower right, there's Daksha with the goat's head. He's got a nice little umbrella over his head. And, Brahma and Shiva are present. Now Vishnu is present. And it's a really nice section. We're not going to go into the detail. This is the last slide. There's, just like when Krishna appears, Canto 10, chapter 2, prayers by the demigods to Krishna in the womb. It's a whole chapter. So this is like half a chapter where this demigod says this, and that demigod says that, and Brahma says this, and Daksha says that, and the Ribhus speak, and they all say something. The Kinnaras, and the Gandharvas, and the Apsaras, and Indra, and the host of personalities, Vidyadharas, they all offer their prayers, including Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva is respecting his father, but there's the father of his father. That's Lord Vishnu, and he knows it. And so he's constantly meditating on the Supreme Lord, so he offers very beautiful prayers. And after receiving their prayers, the yajna continues, the remnants of the sacrifice are distributed, and Lord Vishnu gives some parting instructions, and the chapter ends. It's almost like they all lived happily ever after. But it's not quite like that. That's not what happened. We find out later in Canto 6. Here's what happened. Daksha died of embarrassment because he's got a goat's head. He died of embarrassment. He had no will to live. And long period of time, his soul went somewhere, and he took birth again. Again with the name Daksha. I call it Daksha Part 2. He had the same problem. He was forgiven by Lord Shiva. He was forgiven for his offense, but the tendency for offense was still there. That's a big problem. Tendency for offense can be very problematic. So we'll hear about that when we get to Canto 6. He offends Narada the same way that he's offending Lord Shiva. He's got a problem, this Daksha fellow. Pride. Here's a little, I'll say two things and we'll end and see if there's some discussion. Get the microphone ready. Here's a math formula. The fruits of pious activity plus a heart that's impure equals pride. Many people, according to Bhagavad-Gita, and it's not just in Vedic practice, it's all over the world, there's a tendency of humankind. Those people that do religious things, and the result of their religious things, they prosper. If their interest is primarily prosperity, then their hearts are still impure. Most people, what Krishna says in chapter 2 Bhagavad-Gita, is most people think that the purpose of the Vedas is to act piously so that in this life you can enjoy the fruits of that piety, and in the next life you go to heaven. And that's a common understanding all over the world. I'll say it again. Most people think, Krishna says, and it's true, I've done some studies here and there, most people think the purpose of religion, the purpose of the Vedas, is to live a pious life so that in this life you can prosper, and after this life you go to heaven and prosper even further. And that's the purpose of religion. That's not the purpose of religion. Most people think that. There is another purpose. And those who think that, something happens. They prosper, but their hearts are not yet pure. And so there's a tendency, it's not everywhere, but there's a tendency for pride. The fruits of piety plus a heart that's impure equals pride. So many people that are wealthy or beautiful or famous or strong or influential in some way, there's a tendency to become proud. And pride causes fall. There's this saying, pride goeth before the fall. You've heard that one? Pride goeth before the fall. And where does the pride come from? Fruits of piety. Wanting to be the enjoyer and have others see you as that's Daksha. So pride was in his heart like anything. So he became very hurtful towards his followers and towards exalted persons, especially envious of one whose pride is envious of others. It's very dangerous. Pride can destroy all good things. Say it the other way. All good things can be destroyed by pride. So beware of pride. So how do you check pride? Make your heart pure. How do you make your heart pure? Bring your heart in connection with the Supreme Pure, or through bhakti, through the personality of Godhead. That's how the heart becomes pure. It's not quick fix, but it's the remedy. And one other thing, and I'm going to end. This is a Bhagavad-Gita lesson. Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 5, text number 29. Prabhupada calls it the peace formula, 529 Bhagavad-Gita. The peace formula starts with Bhoktaram Yagatapasam. So here in this image we see a yagya, that's that big fire there, and there's the bhokta of the yagya, and that's Vishnu. All sacrifice is meant for Vishnu. In fact, one of the meanings of yagya vai Vishnu. Yagya means to satisfy Vishnu. Yagya means to satisfy Vishnu. So, because he's the bhokta. So when Vishnu appeared, everything became nice. But if you're doing a yagya to get something other than satisfying Vishnu, you can have a problem. That was Daksha was expert. Daksha means expert. So he was expert at yagyas, but not at satisfying Vishnu. And you can't satisfy Vishnu if you offend the devotees of Vishnu. That's what Brahma said too. You can't find happiness if you offend those who are dear to Vishnu. You won't find happiness. So be careful. That's the warning that Brahma gave. And then by his influence, Lord Shiva went back and restored Daksha's head, and the yagya went on, and the sacrifice was completed properly, satisfying Vishnu. That's the end of chapter 7. That's 7 chapters of Canto 4. To be continued. With some very nice paintings, right? Okay, let's see if there's some discussion. Anyone here would like to? You're eventually going to get to this, I guess, if you keep with your reading group. Yeah?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So here the question is that Lord Shiva is saying to Lord Brahma as father, but in the different lokas where they live, Lord Brahma's loka is on the outer side of the material universe.
No, it's in the material universe.
It's in the material universe,
Yes.
but Lord Shiva's is outside the material universe.
No,
right?
it's in the material universe. It's in the higher realm, but it's
Okay.
in the material universe. No, let's clarify. Shiva Tattva is very complex. Shiva has various abodes, about 7 of them. There's Sada Shiva. No, don't let me spin you out. Sada Shiva is in the Vaikuntha realm. Shiva Loka is outside of this material universe in the spiritual realm. Kailash is in the material realm. And one of the abodes of Brahma is at the very bottom of the universe. It's called Mahakalapur. It's where the Rudras, for his expansions, reside, waiting for the devastation of the universe. There's others. So there's multiple residents because he has multiple features. It's not so cut and dry. It's a little difficult to understand. So where he was in Mount Kailash, but not someplace you go in the Himalayas and you found Mount Kailash. It's in a higher dimensional region. That's where he was. And if you when you read this section of the Bhagavatam, you'll find it's a celestial region, but it's within the universe.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
One more question.
Yeah,
if I
sure.
can. So, Daksha is it a title like Manu or it's one-time occurrence kind of thing?
Do you want to know, during every Mano, is there this fellow named Daksha that does these same things?
Yes.
I can't say. I don't know. There's there is a Daksha that appears a second time, and it's not during which Manu he appears. Let's see. It may be again in Swayambhuva Manu, later in Swayambhuva Manu. I have to research that. Daksha. It's Daksha Part 2. I'm not sure. But it's there. If not by name, there's you can say a prototype or a mode of nature, a person who's embodying that mode of nature that appears and does what he does. You know, an embodiment of envy and pride, whatever his name is, and messes up. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. From this pastime, so in the first time when Lord Shiva got offended, Daksha offended Lord Shiva, so there are many great personalities were present there, including Lord Brahma. I'm not sure if he was corrected at that time, Daksha. Was he?
Well, he wasn't there the second time. He was there the first time. And we have no indication whether he was corrected or not.
Yeah, the reason I was asking, because...
There's a good reason to ask. If he was corrected and did it again, that's different than if he wasn't corrected and did it again.
Second thing, I mean, yeah, Brahma came at the end after he killed Daksha, and
Yeah,
then he
so
was.
he wasn't there for the second time.
Yeah, second time he was not there. So I was thinking again, even after that, so he was kind of Lord Shiva forgave
Yeah.
Daksha,
Yeah.
but still also Daksha was performing many yajnas. That was the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, he was
And Lord-
reinstated.
Yeah,
That's
Vishnu-
what Brahma requested, and so it was.
And Lord Vishnu also came, but still his tendencies are still there.
Yes. He's a pretty stubborn fellow. Tendencies don't get up and go away so easily. Especially, it's not just, this is the Sanskrit word is anartha, and anarthas arise from offense, and anarthas that arise from offense are very pernicious. They're very difficult to get rid of. More so than, let's just say, something else. A tendency to, I don't know, tendency that's not good. Speak out of turn or something like that. It's serious business. Okay. We have some online questions.
Sachisuta Prabhu's question. In the slide which glorifies Lord Shiva, it says that Shiva as Characharam Gurum, spiritual master of the whole world. Is my understanding correct that Lord Balaram, Lord Nityananda or Lakshmana are also considered as spiritual masters of the world?
Sure.
How to understand the spiritual master position of the whole world where both Lord Shiva and Balaram are addressed with the same title?
No problem. There are many qualified persons, and the qualified person is a qualified person. The world is made more fortunate by having more qualified persons.
Rupavilas Prabhu's question. Why did Lord Shiva not respect his father-in-law by standing up? Lord Krishna respects Yudhishthir and all the elders.
Well, there's two reasons. One reason we recited already, and that is, he says to Satie, when the second yajna was being planned, I was being criticized wrongly because I didn't stand, because my respect should go to the Supersoul, and that's where my respect was going. In my core of the heart, I'm always offering my respect to Vasudeva. And so I didn't stand. Although his statement was, persons observe those etiquettes because of the bodily conception of life. So his wife, Satie, said, he's not bound by those regulations. Now, he may observe those regulations, but he's not bound by those regulations. He's on another platform. And those are on this other platform that may or may not, and they're not at fault if they don't. And the other was, he's not worthy of respect. So, that is to say, Brahma is his father, so he offered his respect to Brahma. He's worthy of his respect. It was so based upon his spiritual qualification, not based upon age or something like that. Because in another sense, they're both brothers. Shiva and Daksha are both sons of Brahma, direct sons of Brahma. They're brothers. But, it's not the same as his father. It's brothers. And for that matter, Shiva is the elder brother. But Daksha is looking at, wait a minute, it was my daughter that married him, so he's my son-in-law, and he's not offering me due respect. So it wasn't a transgression of etiquette.
Govinda Mohini Mataji, what was the reason or special qualities that Daksha had that made him proud?
The special quality was his heart was dirty. He had fruits of piety, but his heart was not clean. That made him proud. And how did he? So you can do yagyas where Vishnu is the beneficiary, or you can do yagyas where getting pious credits, you become the beneficiary. You offer sacrifices to the devas, but it's really about yourself. And that was Daksha. He wasn't honoring Lord Vishnu. He was wanting to get piety, and the fame and the fruits of piety. That was his unclean heart.
Atulya Mataji's question: is it a right understanding that till the time we become pure, there will be pride in the heart?
Yes.
Then how to protect oneself from manifestation of pride when we are
pure
not
devotion, and that's your protection. And keep in the association of those who will very kindly and gently remind you of this point, just as we're doing right now.
This Prakash Narayan Govindan Prabhu. My understanding is that envy has no basis in reality. This is because envy is not in Krishna, and anything that has no basis in Krishna doesn't have any basis in reality.
Very good.
Is this correct? If so, is pride similar?
Well, there's transcendental pride. Like when Krishna kills a demon. After Krishna killed Aristasura, he went to the gopis and was bragging about, I killed him. You came to me and asked for my protection, so I did it, and he's dead. You should be happy. And he was expecting their appreciation. He got something else. It's a transcendental emotion or transcendental rasa. Next.
Mahati Mataji, 2 questions. The first one is about sage Bhrigu cursed that let the followers of Lord Shiva become atheists, addicted to wine, flesh, etc. Is that curse still applied in people in Kali Yuga?
No.
And why?
Scholars can get into it and say different things, and everything depends on connection with the source of everything. For example, there's a Vaishnava Sampradaya that has Lord Shiva as the head of the Vaishnava Sampradaya. And there's some persons who are followers of Lord Shiva that follow him as he is a worshipper of Vishnu. And this little detail came out in their very first class. The 4 Sampradayas have their origin, and Lord Shiva is one of the heads of those Sampradayas. So not all followers of Lord Shiva have that problem. So that everything depends upon the connection or connectivity with the source of everything, the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. And Lord Shiva is connected. So some persons understand that, and some persons don't.
And her second question is, why did Lord Shiva not respond to that curse that Bhrigu Muni gave.
Well, he did. He left.
And the next one again, Mahati Mataji. When I feel proud in certain situations, I pray to Krishna to help me, and I try to think I am a servant of Krishna and a tiny soul, but it takes some time to correct the consciousness. Kindly help me. What are some immediate prayers or things I can do to overcome pride?
Immediate things to overcome pride. Each of us have our favorite prayers. One that comes to mind that's a celebrated prayer is found in Canto 5, Chapter 19, Prahlad's prayers to Lord Nrsingadev, who prays to have such desires removed. Canto 5, Chapter 19, Prayers by Prahlad to Lord Nrsingadev. Take that one, and that's an immediate one to turn to. You want a prayer, that's a really good one. He prays to Lord Nrsingadev to take, with his sharp teeth and pinching nails, to extract from his heart all such things.
Another question again from Mahati Mataji is, I thought Bhrigu is follower of Lord Shiva. I could not understand why did he curse
Yeah.
Lord Shiva's followers.
I'm not sure that he's a follower of Lord Shiva. Maybe you can send me your reference that says he's a follower of Lord Shiva. Rather than me doing my homework, you do your homework and send me where it says that Bhrigu is a follower of Lord Shiva. I don't think so.
This is from Shriya Mataji. We heard many times that Srimad Bhagavatam is about Krishna. Is there a reason to include the story of Daksha?
Why not? Because it's in relation to a devotee of Krishna.
This is from Shubhra Mataji. What is the mood with which a disciple approaches Anartha Nivritti so that it's not about myself, rather it's for the pleasure of spiritual master?
Well, you've got within your question is the answer. You can turn left or turn right. You can following a path. You see a fork in the road, and over there is the left side, and over there is the right side. And you get your GPS out, and it tells you whether to go left or right. And your Bhakti GPS says, go down the path you do something that's meant for the pleasure of Krishna, instead of following the path that says you do something because you're going to get something.
This question is from Rajeshwari Pran Mataji. Is there any significance for goat's head for Daksha, or was it just that was there?
I don't know. I mean, and commonly, I just assumed this, that when the sacrifice is made, it's a sacrifice of a goat. So in a symbolic way, because he's really good at sacrifices, he was given a goat's head. Is in a symbolic way. But I don't know of any justification for that intuitive understanding. I don't think it was just there was a goat's head lying around or something like that.
And did he live with this goat's head until his next birth?
No, well, he died. And then it was a long time before he became the next Daksha. It didn't say how long he lived, but it's mentioned in Canto 6. Prabhupada writes in a purport that he died out of shame.
This is Radhe Mataji. Normally, pride is related to self-confidence to some extent, or pleasure that you get from your achievement. How can we find that we are moving from self-confidence to pride extreme?
Who is the enjoyer? That's the litmus test. When you're remembering Krishna and that Krishna is meant to be the enjoyer, that's a litmus test. When you're forgetting, that's the other.
This is from Kalpataru Mataji.
If we're at the center, or Krishna is at the center. Okay? More?
Lot more.
A lot more?
6 questions.
4?
6.
6 more. Gosh. How are we doing out here? We're okay for 6 more? Younger generation folks. Okay. Let's go. Okay.
This is Kalpataru Mataji. The Satie practice, although superstitious, it was followed and was very prominent many years back.
What's that?
After the husband dies, the women were forced into the funeral pyre.
Okay.
In which a widow sacrifices herself by sitting atop. Yeah. Does Mother Sati's burning herself has any relation with this?
She didn't give up her life with her deceased husband. It's called, it's just given the name Satie, although it has no connection with the husband departing this world and the wife following behind him.
And this is the second question from her. I learned from our Bhakti Shastri class, chapter 10, verse 4 to 5, that intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt, delusion, forgiveness, pleasure, pain, birth, death, fear, all the negative also, fame, infamy are all created by me alone, Krishna says. So there are some negative emotions like pain, fear, infamy created by Krishna. Can we understand that even pride is created by him?
There's nothing that exists that isn't.
This is from Arna, Ankita Mataji's daughter.
How old is she?
10.
10?
Yeah.
Okay. How old are you? 7? Really? Okay, here's a girl that's 10 asking a question.
Lord Shiva is a great devotee of Krishna, and devotees control their anger. So why did Lord Shiva get so angry?
He's Ashutosh. But he explained what that anger was. It was to uplift them. It wasn't the other kind of anger that we know.
Then there's Radha Kunja Bihari Prabhu's question. Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, Daksha, and so many elevated personalities are present at the yagya.
Yeah.
Those were also the days of Vedic way of life. How could the situation so quickly degrade, leading to all the offensive swearing and carnage?
The answer is pride. Elevated persons whose hearts are not pure will be the sitting place of pride. And pride gets irritated, and it doesn't always result in counteracting or counter-cursing or retaliating. But when pride is there, that's what results. And that's what Lord Shiva said. I don't take it very seriously because it's material and petty. So elevated persons, if they're still in touch with a bodily conception of life, are going to be subject to that. Next.
In this age of Kali, how can we prevent such escalation of pride and conflict?
We answered that already.
And Radha Kunjaberi Prabhu's next question, how...
I mean, just a short answer is, the question being asked here is a question that Vyasadeva was contemplating. What to do about the pernicious effect of the age of Kali. And his solution was the Vedas should be in a written form and people should have access to them. And then specifically, the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the cure. Now, to get people to take up and assimilate the message of the Bhagavatam, that's another thing. But here's a nice reading group that's trying to do that. That's the antidote.
Sanchari's question, what is the significance... okay. When reading, have you ever come across a connection between... I think we answered.
Okay.
And Sumitra, she texted me.
Okay, her throat is not good.
Is there two different Sankarshanas? If so, what is the difference?
Yeah. There's Mahasankarshan and there's Sankarshan. And it's a technical distinction. But like, for example, when the name-giving ceremony for Krishna and Balaram was performed, one of the names given to Balaram was Sankarshan. And that's Mahasankarshan. And there are expansions in the spiritual realm of the four, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Adiruddha. So that's the Sankarshan of the spiritual world. Now there's also a Sankarshan who expands himself in the form of Anantashesh and holds up the universes, the planets within the universe. So that's another Sankar, that's his expansion, also known by the name Sankarshan.
This is from Padmaja Mataji. I'm continuing to do my japa of 16 rounds daily, and I find it very uplifting. However, I'm physically exhausted given my current situation. How do I, or is there any way I can ensure I do not commit an offense to the holy name when I chant when I'm very tired?
I mean, the simple answer is get sufficient rest so that you're not tired to the degree that you make offense. But even if you take rest, it doesn't guarantee you're not going to make offense. The guarantee is, Krishna gives you the spiritual strength to not make offense, and the intelligence and spiritual strength. But when you're very tired, then better that you chant than you don't chant when you're tired, if to complete your chanting. But better than that is you have proper rest or sufficient rest.
Last question, Radha Kunjabehari Prabhu's question again. How did Lord Shiva marry his younger brother's daughter?
There's one of these Vedic things that I don't really understand, and somebody that understands it could answer your question.
No.
There's some rule about when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate, and I've had people explain that rule to me, and I don't understand it. I'm sure he didn't violate some rule. Okay, anything else? Very good. We're waiting.
So, Hare Krishna. So, Shiva's name is also Mahadev, and all the demigods listen to him. So, why did so many of the demigods decide to go against Shiva and choose Daksha's side?
Good question. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know a scriptural answer. I just know in practical matters of life, sometimes loyalties get confused. You know, sometimes I'm loyal over here, and sometimes I'm loyal over there. And it's on the loyalty is a kind of material thing, anyways. Because if you're in a transcendental position, then you're not a party-spirited person. And you don't get involved in cursing and counter-cursing if you're in a transcendental position. So if you're not in a transcendental position, you may be party-spirited. And when you're party-spirited, you can maybe align differently. It goes on like that. So if there's a specific reason why, I don't know, other than just a general material reason. When you get on the material platform and you know, us and them, the good guys and the bad guys, and of course we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, and they're thinking vice versa, then it just gets really crazy. People lose their sense of direction and loyalty. There may be some more specific reason. You know, it's an interesting question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. My question was like, when Daksha insulted like Lord Shiva, could he have like done anything after, when he realized that it was actually wrong? Could he have done anything to stop what was going to happen next, or he had to, like, could he like repent what he had done to Shiva?
I lost it.
Could he not repent? Could he repent?
Could he?
Like after he insulted Shiva, and then he might, and if he was like,
Well, he formally apologized, but what was going on inside his heart is maybe something else. And,
okay.
You know, quite possibly, quite likely, there's some resentment. I had this beautiful head, now I got this goat's head. And he's the cause. So I want to get back. I'm saying I'm sorry, but I'm like, I want to get back. You know? Some lingering, deeper rooted resentment.
Okay.
You know? Deep-rooted tendencies don't get up and go away so quickly. Okay, we have something in the back here? No? No. Okay. Let's call it an end. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.